Elon Musk vanished without a word. No cameras, no headlines. Just him and his young son disappearing into silence. The world panicked. But they weren't escaping to space. They were chasing something far more sacred. And what his son whispered inside a forgotten desert chapel will break your heart. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The sky was still soft with the last shades of night when Elon Musk stepped into the private terminal. He held his 5-year-old son X by the hand, their steps quiet against the polished floor. No security detail followed. No assistants waited with briefcases or schedules. The only sound was the rhythmic tap of Elon's shoes and the gentle hum of the pre-dawn air. Outside on the tarmac, his private jet sat fueled and ready. But Elon didn't head for the stairs. Instead, he paused, looked at his son, then slowly turned away from the plane. Without a word to anyone, he led X to a black rental car parked under a dim overhead light. Not a Tesla, no custom software, just a plain car with manual locks and a paper map folded in the glove box. They got in without hesitation. X settled into the back seat, hugging his shark plushie. Elon sat behind the wheel, placed his hands firmly at 10 and 2, and took a long breath. As the engine started, X leaned forward. "Daddy, where are we going?" Elon glanced at him through the mirror. His voice was low and steady. "Somewhere quieter." That was all he said. Then they drove into the fading night, no one watching, no cameras flashing, just a father and son slipping into stillness, disappearing without a trace. The highway stretched out like a ribbon of quiet between them and everything they'd left behind. Elon kept his eyes on the road, his knuckles pale against the steering wheel. His mind, normally a storm of calculations and strategy, was quiet. For the first time in years, there were no notifications, no crises, no meetings waiting on the other end. Just the desert, open sky, and the hum of the road beneath them. X sat in the back seat, legs swinging gently, shark plushie tucked under his arm. He hummed softly to himself, sometimes tracing patterns on the window with one small finger. He didn't ask where they were going. He didn't seem to care. His peace was both comforting and heartbreaking. After hours of driving, they pulled off at a small roadside diner. The paint on the sign was faded, the windows smudged, the bell above the door rusty. Inside, the air smelled like syrup and coffee. Elon ordered pancakes. X wanted chocolate milk. They sat in a corner booth near the window. No tablet, no news feed, just 2 plates, 2 forks, and the morning sun creeping across the linoleum. "Daddy," X asked between bites, "are you in trouble?" Elon looked up, surprised. The question hung there for a moment. "No," he said gently, reaching for his son's hand. "I just needed to remember what's real." X nodded like he understood. "I think pancakes are real." Elon laughed, really laughed for the first time in weeks. But before the warmth could settle, a voice from a nearby table broke the moment. "Is that Elon Musk?" A man whispered it too loudly to his wife. Elon froze. His heart skipped. The silence they had driven so far to find had just been pierced. And the world might not be far behind. By the time the sun set on the first day of their escape, the headlines had already erupted. Elon Musk disappears without warning. Where is Musk? No staff or security alerted. Tech billionaire vanishes with son. Within hours, the speculation reached a boiling point. News anchors tossed theories across studio tables. Reddit threads propped us by the second. Was it a protest? A nervous breakdown? A statement to the world? Stocks wavered, investors panicked, and conspiracy videos surged. Helicopters circled his empty mansion. Drones hovered near SpaceX. But Elon said nothing. He had slipped through their fingers, and he wasn't looking back. At a dusty roadside motel somewhere in the Arizona desert, far from the chaos, Elon Musk sat on a rusted lawn chair outside room 6. His phone sat face down on the bedside table, long forgotten. No calls returned, no tweets sent, just quiet. Just. Inside the room, X was curled up on the edge of a sun-faded mattress, shark plushie under one arm, blanket half draped across his small frame. He didn't stir, not even as the screen door creaked in the wind. Elon tilted his head back, eyes tracing constellations he used to study in scientific terms. Tonight they weren't coordinates or future launch points. They were just stars. Silent, ancient, beautiful. And somehow, in their silence, they understood him better than the world ever had. He inhaled deeply, the dry desert air cutting through the noise still buzzing in the back of his mind. "I don't care if the world finds me," he whispered into the dark. "I'm already home." The words surprised him, not because he didn't believe them, but because he did. For the first time in decades, the metrics and models and mission statements had fallen away, and what remained was the one thing he hadn't made time for: presence. He sat like that for a long time, just breathing, just being. When the sky shifted to lavender and pale gold, the first birds chirped in the distance. A gas truck rumbled down the highway, and from inside the room, small footsteps padded softly across the thin carpet. X appeared in the doorway, his hair tousled from sleep, dragging his shark behind him. "Daddy," he murmured, rubbing one eye. "Are we home now?" Elon crouched down in front of him, hands resting gently on his son's small shoulders. "We are, buddy," he said, his voice low and steady. "As long as we're together, we're home." X nodded, satisfied. Then he leaned forward and hugged his father's neck. Elon closed his eyes and held him close. Outside, the sky kept brightening, the world kept spinning. But inside that moment, it all stood still. The road wound through barren hills, sun-bleached signs, and valleys of cactus and dust. Elon drove in silence, the rental car humming over uneven pavement. In the back seat, X was humming again, shark plushie in one arm, his other hand out the window catching the wind like he was trying to touch something invisible. The desert stretched endlessly around them, but Elon didn't feel lost. For once, the lack of direction felt intentional. Just before noon, they crested a hill and saw it. A small white chapel, worn but standing, alone on a rise with nothing else in sight. No parking lot, no fences, just a bell above the door and a wooden bench outside, splintered from the sun. Elon parked the car in the dirt and sat for a moment, staring. X looked up from his drawing pad. "Is that a spaceship?" he asked. Elon smiled faintly. "Not quite, but it might be just as quiet." They stepped out together, the sun hot on their backs. X skipped ahead, kicking pebbles, then paused at the chapel door. Elon opened it slowly, the hinges creaking. Inside it was cooler. Dust floated in sunbeams pouring through stained glass. Wooden pews lined the room. The air smelled like age, silence, and something sacred. X walked to the front and climbed onto a pew, legs swinging beneath him. He set the shark beside him and looked around. "Can we live here?" he asked. Elon froze. It wasn't said with longing for toys or comfort. It was the kind of question only a child could ask with sincerity and depth. The kind of question that didn't mean, "Is this place big enough?" but, "Is this place safe enough to stay real?" Elon sat beside him, staring at the altar. The candles were melted to their bases, the cross behind the pulpit chipped, but it was quiet. "I don't know," Elon said honestly, "but I think we could stay for a little while." They didn't speak after that. They just sat. Eventually, X spotted a box of old, half-burned votive candles. He carried one to Elon. "Can we light it?" Elon helped him strike a match and set the wick aglow. A small flame flickered gently. X cupped his hands around it and closed his eyes. He leaned forward and whispered something only he could hear. "Did you wish for?" Elon asked softly. X grinned. "That we never have to leave." Elon looked down at him, heart caught in his throat. He reached for his son's hand and held it, gently, reverently. In that moment he realized something that shattered him, not in pain, but in clarity. This boy, this 5-year-old who named clouds and colored Saturn on napkins, wasn't asking for more time at Disneyland. He wasn't asking for more screens or shinier gadgets. He was asking for stillness, for space to breathe, for the presence of a father who wasn't lost in the noise. Elon turned his gaze back to the candle, to the worn wood, to the cracked glass catching gold light. And a single thought echoed in his mind. How did he understand what took me 50 years to see? Elon sat alone on the chapel steps, elbows resting on his knees, the dry wind brushing across his face. The desert stretched out before him, wide and unbothered by the chaos of the outside world. Behind him, the small chapel stood like a forgotten promise, unimpressive, untouched, but deeply alive in its silence. X was just a few yards away, crouched near a patch of rocks. He had arranged them in a careful circle, naming each one after a planet. "This one is Mars," he said proudly. "This one is Neptune. And this one," he held up the smallest stone, "is Daddy." Then he set it gently in the center of the circle. Elon watched, a soft ache rising in his chest. The boy didn't know about stock crashes, missed calls, or the dozens of press releases being written at that very moment. He only knew that his dad was here now. And that, to him, was everything. The stillness wrapped around Elon like a heavy blanket. He reached for his phone, not out of habit but instinct. When he turned it over, the screen lit up. Hundreds of missed calls, messages, news alerts. A headline scrolled across the top. "Where is Elon Musk?" He swiped it all away, and then he saw it. One message stood out from the noise. It was from his mother. "I'm proud of you. Wherever you are, stay there a little longer. He needs this. So do you." Elon stared at those words, his hand tightening around the phone. He blinked hard, swallowing the lump rising in his throat. She understood. Somehow, she saw through the whirlwind and found the still point. He placed the phone face down on the step and exhaled. For years, he had chased timelines, breakthroughs, front-page features. He had led teams to build rockets, cars, and empires. He had fought to be the first, the fastest, the boldest. And yet here, in the quiet play of his son stacking rocks in the sand, he saw what he'd missed. Presence. Real, undivided presence. Not just being there, but being here, in this moment, in this breath, in this ordinary miracle of time shared. X looked up from his planetary circle and waved. Elon smiled and waved back, tears threatening to spill. And in that exact instant, he let go. He surrendered the illusion that changing the world meant disappearing from it. He released the belief that his value was only measured by velocity, revenue, or reach. He was enough right here. Because this dusty steppe, this sun-soaked sky, this boy was everything. He had built rockets to reach the stars. Yet somehow he had missed the galaxy sitting beside him. The sun was starting to lower behind the hills, casting long golden beams across the chapel steps where Elon sat, arms resting on his knees. X was nearby, still lost in his own little universe, humming softly as he rearranged his rock planets. It had been hours since they'd spoken, yet everything had been said. Then came the knock. Not loud, not urgent, just one deliberate knock on the old chapel door. Elon's entire body tensed. He stood slowly, glancing at X, who had also paused, eyes wide. "Is it bad guys?" the boy asked. Elon placed a gentle finger to his lips. "Shh, stay here," he said, then stepped cautiously to the door and opened it. Standing there was a man in a black suit, clean-cut, with an earpiece and a calm, unreadable face. "Mr. Musk," the agent said quietly, "he doesn't want to force anything, he just wants to talk. Alone." Elon followed his gaze down the hill. At the base, parked in the dirt, was a black SUV with an American flag fluttering from the front, and standing beside it, hands in his pockets, was former President Donald Trump. Elon's heart thudded, not out of fear but disbelief. He stepped out slowly, dust clinging to his shoes, and walked down the hill, each step stirring something deep inside. Trump didn't speak at first. He waited until Elon was within arm's reach. Then he said, simply, "You disappeared." Elon said nothing. "The world's panicking," Trump continued. "But I saw the footage. The chapel. The kid. I get it now." Elon blinked. "You get it?" Trump nodded, his voice softer than Elon had ever heard it. "I know what it's like to have the whole world at your feet and still feel like you're losing the one thing that actually matters." There was a pause. "You don't owe the world your soul, Elon," he added, "but eventually you're going to have to step back in. Just don't lose what you found here." Elon looked down toward the chapel. X was watching from the window, shark plushie still in hand. Trump followed his gaze. "That boy. He's your legacy. Not Mars, not Tesla, not Neuralink. Him." Elon didn't reply. He didn't need to. Trump extended a hand, not as a president, but as a man who had made mistakes, lost things, maybe even learned from them. Elon shook it quietly, a moment of unspoken understanding passing between them. Then he turned and climbed back up the hill. As he reached the chapel steps, X opened the door before he could knock. "Was that the moon guy?" he asked with wide eyes. Elon laughed. "Close enough." He picked X up, hugged him tightly and held him there, heart pressed against the only mission that ever truly mattered. And at that exact moment, from behind a dusky bush at the edge of the hill, a photographer who had followed the security team snapped a single photo. The image would go viral within hours. A father and son framed in the soft light of dusk, standing on the steps of an old chapel. No suits, no tech. Just love. A man returning to the only place the world couldn't build for him, stillness, surrender, and the eyes of a boy who called him home. The light inside the chapel had shifted by the time Elon and X returned. What had once been harsh midday glare through the stained glass windows was now warm and gentle, casting golden pools across the wooden pews. Dust still floated lazily in the air, but the silence no longer felt like emptiness. It felt like presence. Elon sat back down in the same pew where he'd watched his son whisper a wish to a flickering candle. X climbed up beside him, shark plushie in hand, kicking his legs gently as he leaned against his dad's shoulder. For a while they didn't speak. They just sat, listening to the wind move across the desert, to the hush that blanketed everything beyond the chapel walls. Then X broke the silence. "Daddy," he said softly, "why did that man come here?" Elon looked down at his son, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. He thought about how to answer, not as a CEO, not as a public figure, but as a father. "Came to remind me," Elon said, "that I already have everything I need." X looked up at him, eyes wide. "Even without robots?" Elon chuckled, then smiled with more truth than he'd spoken in a long time. "Especially without robots." X giggled, nodding like he understood perfectly. As the sun dipped lower, Elon stood and began gathering their things. He knew they couldn't stay here forever. The world outside was already catching up. He could feel it in the distant hum of tires on gravel, in the subtle pressure of time returning. But that didn't unsettle him anymore. because what they found in this forgotten chapel wasn't something tied to a location. It was something they could carry with them. Peace wasn't a place, it was a choice. X helped pack their small bag, a few snacks, a worn drawing pad, the shark. Elon left his phone behind on the pew, face down and silent. He didn't need it anymore. Not for this moment. As they stepped outside, the desert greeted them like an old friend. The sky was a canvas of soft orange and deepening blue. X reached up and took his dad's hand without a word. They stood for a final moment on the chapel steps. No rush, no deadlines, just two figures framed by the fading light. One man who had spent his life reaching for the stars, and one boy who had shown him how to stop and hold the present. As they walked toward the car, X glanced back one last time. "Goodbye, spaceship," he whispered. Elon looked too. "Goodbye, sanctuary." He opened the car door for X, who climbed in, already humming one of his made-up songs. Elon took the driver's seat, started the engine and pulled away slowly, dust rising behind them. And though the road would eventually lead them back to the world, Elon knew something had shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly, but deeply, like a foundation being reset. He had chosen love over legacy. And for the first time, the boy beside him didn't feel like part of the life he was trying to build. He was the reason for it. The world no longer owned him. Because now, the boy knew. His dad didn't belong to the world anymore. He belonged to him. What noise do you let drown out the people you love? Maybe it's the constant ding of a phone, the unending scroll of emails, the calendar that never seems to leave space for rest. Maybe it's the expectations, the pressure, the voice that says you'll be enough when... But in all that noise, have you started to forget what matters most? Not your goals, not your to-do list, but the people quietly waiting for you to look up. Where would you go to truly hear yourself think again? It doesn't need to be a desert chapel. Maybe it's your front porch at sunset. Maybe it's sitting with your child before bed, listening to the softness in their voice. Maybe it's 5 minutes in your car, parked at the edge of a field, with nothing but silence between you and the sky. Stillness isn't about the place, it's about the choice. Elon Musk left everything behind, not because he was giving up, but because he was waking up to the boy who only wanted his time, to the silence that held more wisdom than any boardroom, to the realization that the most important legacy isn't written in headlines, it's written in the hearts of those closest to us. So maybe now it's your turn, your moment to step back, even just for a while, to breathe, to reflect, to ask yourself, what would happen if I stopped chasing and started listening? Who in my life needs me to simply be there? If this story stirred something in you, don't let it pass by. Pause, reach out to someone you love, take a quiet moment, and remember, you don't have to disappear to find peace. You just have to choose it. And if you believe stories like this matter, please share this one with someone who needs it. Subscribe for more inspiring stories that remind us what truly counts. Presence over pressure, love over legacy, and the simple, powerful truth that sometimes the greatest success is being fully here,